Podcasting from Hartford, you're listening to the Connecticut Scoreboard Podcast, your place for all things Connecticut sports.
All right, so this weekend we've got UConn-Wyoming up on tap. So joining us today in our preview series, we've got Ryan Thorburn. He's from the Star-Tribune. Ryan, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jared.
So to get started, I know this is a rare matchup between UConn and Wyoming. Don't usually get these types of matchups. And now with UConn's independent schedule, we'll be seeing this a little bit more. Take UConn fans through what the expectations were of this Wyoming program heading into this season and how they've lived up to those so far.
Yeah, I think they had pretty high expectations going into the 2020 season, and they were one of the many teams that just had a nightmare of a 2020 season. They finished 2-4. They had a bunch of key defensive players opt out. They had a couple home games canceled where the other team had COVID issues. So it was a real nightmare. But the thing that came out of that was a lot of, seniors came back to be super seniors. Mm-hmm. I think in the S&P Plus rankings, they were the number 2 most returning production this year in the nation. Wow. So they have more depth than a normal group of 5 team. They have a lot of experience and, a lot of really good players that have done some things in the past. And that confluence of things, I think Craig Bohl said that it's time to kick the door down in terms of winning a Mountain West championship. And that's their goal. This is clearly the best overall team they've had since Bohl's been here. Now, maybe of the 2016 team, when you have Josh Allen and some other NFL players on offense, a higher ceiling maybe. They played for the Mountain West Championship that year, but certainly the depth and experience and just the balance offense, defense is better than he's had here.
What have been some of the key takeaways from these first 3 games that Wyoming's played? I know the first 2 were pretty close games, and then it seemed like things opened up a bit against Ball State over last weekend. But what have been some of those key takeaways from those first 3 games?
I think number 1 is that Sean Chambers is a great leader. He's the quarterback who suffered a fractured leg on the 3rd snap of the 2020 season, which goes back to that nightmarish year they had. He's actually had a season-ending injury in all 3 of his previous seasons at Wyoming. So he's never really had the consistency to lead the team to where he wants to lead it. So I think his resiliency and coming back, fighting through that injury, and then leading Wyoming on 2-minute drives to beat both Montana State and Northern Illinois to start the season. He had a touchdown pass with 47 seconds left to beat Montana State, and then on 3rd and goal from the 9, he ran a bootleg in for the winning touchdown at Northern Illinois after they had blown a 42-16 lead. So I think his leadership is the thing that really stands out because they had a great running game last year, even though they were a poor offense overall, and they had a top 20 defense last year. So he was kind of the missing piece, that leadership. So I think that's great for him. And then, after pulling those 2 games out, I think they really challenged the defense to play back up to its 2020 level and got the running game more balanced against Ball State. And really that was a complete game. And I think Ball State, even though, it was a blowout, I think that's still probably their best opponent and they blew them out. So it took a couple weeks, but I think they've made strides and are in a good position right now as they get ready for UConn.
For UConn fans who might be tuning in and seeing a Wyoming team for the first time, can you take us through the style of play that Coach Bohl and his teams tend to bring to the field week in and week out?
Yeah, it's really simple. Craig Bohl is the guy who built North Dakota State and won, those first few championships there at North Dakota State before passing it on. Then he came to Wyoming. It's been a slow build. This is his 8th year, but basically, his philosophy is to have a physical offensive line and run the ball and then use play action with a big, strong quarterback like Josh Allen. So it's all about running the ball and stopping the run. And that's it. He doesn't care about style points. He doesn't care about spread offenses or modern passing offenses. It's smash mouth. And that's what they're going to do as long as he's here.
In terms of running the ball, I'm curious to just to learn a little bit more, I saw when looking at the box score from the last game, there are multiple guys putting up some big yardage. Is it kind of just a running back by committee situation there? Multiple guys getting touches? What's that situation like?
Yeah, the starting running back, Xavion Valade, is the first team All Mountain West running back. He was the leading rusher in the Mountain West last year. His issue over the years has just been durability, and they've leaned on him so heavily, especially without a passing game last year. So now that they've developed depth behind him, you're not going to see him carrying the ball 30 times. I think he had, about 14 carries against Ball State, and they use Titus Swin, who opted out last year, as a good change of pace guy, more of a bruiser, hard runner. They have Trey Smith, who's a 7th-year senior, who was actually in Lamar Jackson's recruiting class at Louisville. That's how long he's been playing college football. He had his career at Louisville, transferred to Wyoming as a grad transfer, thought, okay, I'll just finish it off here. He's going to end up playing 3 years at Wyoming because of, an injury, a medical red shirt, and then also the COVID year. So he's a really experienced guy who was kind of their number 2 last year. And then this past week against Ball State, they throw in a 4th running back, DeWine McNeely, a redshirt sophomore who really looked good. He's a bigger guy. So the rotation's up to 4 backs now. And the idea with that is at the end of the year, when they have their push towards the Mountain West Championship, for Valade to be healthy and fresh.
Absolutely. And looking on the flip side of the ball, who are some guys on defense that UConn fans should be having their eyes out on?
The best player on Wyoming, and he's been the best player on the field all 3 games for all of the teams, and I imagine he'll be the best player on the field Saturday, is a linebacker named Chad Muma. He replaced a guy named Logan Wilson, who was drafted by the Bengals, had an interception on Sunday, who was an outstanding Mountain West linebacker in a 2nd-round NFL draft pick. Muma might be just as good or even better. He's led the team in tackles all 3 games, every game, 10 or more tackles. He has 2 interception returns for touchdowns, 1 in each of the last 2 games. He's an outstanding football player and maybe the best defensive player in the Mountain West. We'll have to see how that plays out, but he's the leader of the defense. And then they have an experienced defensive line led by super senior Garrett Krall. Their defensive tackle, Ravante Hold, is kind of like the quarterback, Sean Chambers, and just a great comeback story. He's had 3 torn ACLs. Last week, he had 2.5 sacks, I think. So he's a great story. And then their secondary is pretty solid. Their cornerbacks, Azizi Hearn and CJ Colton, are really maybe the best tandem in the Mountain West. And then their nickelback, Keon Blankenbaker, had a pick 6 last week. So overall, they're solid on defense. They aren't putting up the top 20 numbers they did last year, but the talent is definitely there to be a really good Mountain West defense.
If UConn's going to be competitive and have a chance to win this game, has there been an area or two that you've seen over these first 3 games, maybe an area of weakness that UConn might be able to exploit in this matchup?
Yeah, I think the Northern Illinois game, which I mentioned, Wyoming was ahead 42-16. And then in the 4th quarter, they had a 4th and 1 at the NIU 10-yard line. And they were, Bull was just kind of like, let's go for it and smash it in here and put it away. They ended up not getting the first down. And then all of a sudden, Northern Illinois was leading 43-42. They just had this incredible comeback. So I think that's a key for Wyoming, and maybe UConn is, I'm sure the focus will be there at the beginning of the game for Wyoming. It is a road trip. They do have a lot to prove on the road this year, but if they do get that lead, if they let their foot off the pedal at all of a sudden, maybe UConn could get some scores and get that momentum and make it a dangerous situation.
And then looking at trying to take away a strength from Wyoming, it seems as, just from how we've been talking over these past few minutes here, if UConn is able to put in a good effort and really bottle Wyoming up in the running game and stop the run, would that be the best way that UConn could kind of, eliminate a strength of Wyoming?
I think so. I think Sean Chambers, he's created more balance in the offense, but he's still, in that 200-yard range a game or less passing the ball. They just don't pass the ball a lot like most teams. They run the ball and then use the play action and hit the tight end or hit. They do have an emerging wide receiver, Isaiah Nayor, who has scored 3 touchdowns at NIU, but they really do want to run the ball. So if you stop that right away and you make Sean Chambers drop back 30 plus times, then you've got a chance for sure.
I think that'll be interesting, especially with UConn coming off Army and the triple option being so focused on the ground game. Kind of an interesting pivot to the Wyoming running game here in seeing how that holds up and if they were able to take anything away from that game. I'll wrap on this one. I know this is a pretty far road trip for Wyoming coming out to Connecticut. I think I read it might have been the farthest east they've ever come to play a football game. What are your thoughts on this trip out east for them? Luckily, I guess for their sake, it's a little bit later in the afternoon of a start time, so it's not going to be too crazy of an early one for them in terms of the body clock. But what are expectations heading out on the road on such a far out trip to Connecticut?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just talking to the Wyoming football director of operations about that, and they did go to Florida Atlantic one time during the previous regime. Before Bull was here. He thought that might be a little longer. Obviously, they do go to Honolulu once in a while when they play Hawaii in conference, but this is definitely unique. I can't remember them going to the Northeast before. So, obviously this came about because Clemson,
right.
Wyoming was supposed to play Clemson this year, and Clemson ended up buying that out so they could play Georgia. And Wyoming, got $1.1 million or maybe $1 million not to get hauled by Clemson potentially. So, I think there weren't a lot of other teams that had openings. And then with UConn, obviously going independent, it worked out for Wyoming. So I know, given that circumstance, they're happy about it. They're happy to have the game. They're happy to try something different. And, I don't think they're taking it for granted, but just the way things have worked out, I really can't remember Wyoming being a 29-point favorite on the road.
Yeah.
It hasn't probably happened very often. So it's a good opportunity for Wyoming to, get a road win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate the time, Ryan. Enjoy the game. It should be an interesting one here. Again, got some fun factors coming into play here. So Ryan, appreciate the time and thanks for coming on and giving us the lowdown on Wyoming football.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to coming out there as well. And, I've covered a few, women's basketball games and stuff in Connecticut, but never a college football game. So it'll be fun.
There you go. And enjoy the trip out here.